is ready to go live.
Yay,
we are live. Well,
thank you, StreamYard, for not giving us a countdown this time, but we are here live. Backstage, we've been doing some amazing things. Let's just say I'm live with Katie the Eyebrows Alan and Katie the Nostrils Neeves. I'm Katie that we haven't decided yet. Brown, unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight, but she will be here next time. So welcome, everybody, to the brand new series of Proud Women. This time, rather than cramming everything into June, we're going to keep it going over the next couple of months, space them apart a bit more. So we've really got time to dig deep into everything, or in the spirit of authenticity, because I left it a bit late to organise, and we've all got really busy diaries. So there you go. There's so much we want to talk about. But before we go any further, I'm going to hand over to these lovely ladies and get them to intro themselves. And we'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll go for eyebrows first and then nostrils.
Oh, that's me.
It is you.
I'm eyebrows. That's me.
Your eyebrows.
Yeah.
That's you.
Hello, everybody. Katie the Eyebrows Alan, inclusion specialist. And this is a terrible introduction. This is
Well, there's too many Katies. It gets confused.
Over the fear of putting your foot in it, and here I am wading in with both feet and both eyebrows, apparently. So yeah, I'm here representing and flying the flag for all of my fellow aces out there. So thank you for listening to us.
Excellent. Come on then, nostrils. Or is it nose trills if you're going to be posh?
It was it. Oh, it's funny. We wouldn't even listen. We were just laughing and waving our eyebrows around and being really silly. Then Katie. Anyway, hi everyone. So I'm Katie Neeves. I'm the resident gobby trans woman, not just any gobby trans woman, but the gobby trans woman. So I lived as a man for 48 years before finally admitting to myself that I am a transgender woman and that I need to change my body. And then I formed Called to Be Trans to do trans awareness training in inspirational speaking and presenting. And I do that to audiences all over the world now. And I absolutely love it. And it's making difference. It's making a change. It's making differences. And it's very, very needed at the moment. So over to you, Taz.
It so is. I'm Taz Thornton. I'm here to represent. I'm not here to represent anybody but me, actually, but I'm very firmly in the L section of LGBTQIA. Sometimes I go by G2, but not G2, but G, 2. We are in a crazy, crazy mood today. In case anybody's wondering why we're referring to Katie as the nostrils, it's because, bless her, she and I, because we're both old codgers, we're bifocals, and she was trying to work out how to get the camera settings right. Kind of doing this.
That's terrible, isn't it? It's
beautiful.
It could have been worse. It could have been bad, couldn't it?
No, we had a beautiful view of your nostril channel. It was great. And Katie the eyebrows, because Katie sometimes gets a bit hung up about her eyebrows when they've first been done, and so she looks like an angry bird.
Yes.
But hey, I've hardly got eyebrows, so
I could have really done without the two of you doing screenshots while you were looking at my nose as well.
How else are we going to promo it? You know.
and kept trying to count my nose hairs or bogies or something.
We're going to bring tweezers next time and focus them. So anyway, as last year, we've got no real agenda for this. We're just going to talk about anything that comes up, anything that you want to know. If you have questions or there's confusion about anything to do with Pride Month, anything LGBTQIA, lots and lots and lots of letters according to who you're talking to afterwards, drop them here. And it's fair to say pretty much no holds barred. I mean, don't be a twat, but aside from that, we'll answer anything you've got. Thank you. I'm not sure who you are.
We'll ignore you. I mean, that's fine too.
That's cool too. But if you have sensible questions or questions that perhaps aren't sensible but you'd like to ask anyway, ask away and we will do our best. I think one of the big problems is that there's too much ignorance still. And there are too many people who just feel constantly whacked over the head with a rainbow truncheon and don't understand why we're still banging on about things. Now we've got all this equality. But let's see what's happening. One of the things we wanted to talk about today, we were doing a quick hit of the news channels before we went on. And it seems that in the UK, since Pride Month began, there's been a bit of a spate of people committing lovely little anti-LGBTQIA or homophobic acts of resistance by cutting down pride flags from town halls. And most recently, right in my neck of the woods, just down the road, in Stamford. Now, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to achieve with this. I know some people kicked up about D-Day celebrations and saying that there shouldn't be a pride flag on those days, but surely we're talking about inclusion. It's an and world, not an or world. So I don't know. Let's open this up to our panelists. Let's start with Katie Allen. What's your take on all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because ordinarily I'm all up for an act of defiance, but I feel like when it's an act of defiance that's punching down on an already marginalised community, that's not really something that I can ever get behind. So, yeah, for me, it's almost indicative of the increasing kind of anti-LGBTQIA plus movement that is arising, usually driven with a political agenda and other backlash. And this feels like this is the manifestation of that, isn't it? It's that people are now offended by the mere presence of flags that are in celebration of something. And we say in celebration when we all know that like Pride started as a riot, and that's its roots. And there was a reason that was required. And now it feels like, well, we're getting back to a point where it's moving away again from being a celebration and moving back into the territory of do we need to start rioting again?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get sometimes a bit frustrated by Pride being just seen as a party, and by even very often times those at the Pride events not stopping to remember why they're there. But anyway, Katie Neeves.
Yeah, so many prides are just a carnival these days, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I go to quite a few trans prides, and they're always protests. They're proper, because we've got so much to protest about. I mean, we'll cover quite a bit of that either in this edition or in later ones we'll do. But it is a protest, and it should be a protest. And so many prides have forgotten that. And in fact, I had a conversation with an organisation of a pride recently that I went to last year, where it was, I was there to protest on the march. They didn't call it a march; they called it a parade. Kelly's here. Hi, Kelly. Hope you're feeling better. she's had a rough time recently. Sorry, I digress. But they've forgotten all about it being a process. But trans prides are proper protests. And we've got so much to protest about. And anyway, this particular pride that's an ordinary pride, and last year I was there to protest, but my chants were being drowned out by sound systems, mobile sound systems that were being dragged along on trolleys by the side of the parade. A parade, not a march, it's parade. And it was drowning out any other protesters as well. And I thought they've just lost sight of the whole purpose of Pride. And whereas some people within the LGBTQIA plus community have got a lot more rights, certainly over the last sort of 50 years, they've gained
on
them.
paper, at least.
Yeah, I mean, they're going away again, but that will give us a cover that. But as trans people, we've lost so many, and we're in danger of losing so many more. And so we need some solidarity between all of us. And I think, and so I had this conversation with this organizer, and they and sort of said, just try and give them some tips on trying to get the Pride back into being a protest again. And thankfully, he was very receptive to it. And we're going to have a full meeting with some other people in as well, and we'll try and get them protesting again and try and stir some shit up.
But go on.
Yeah, but say the cutting down on these pride flags is just awful, and it's just a cowardly move by someone sneaking along with a knife and cutting it. Well, yeah, it is just a flag, but it is symbolic, and I just think it's not right, is it?
Well, I guess from the other side, to play devil's advocate, they might be claiming that is their protest.
But for me, that comes back to the point again of like, yeah, exactly. Your protest against an already marginalised community. I think that's like really, and I think this is the problem that my belief is that we face, is that there's this kind of misconception that in order for some people to benefit, to kind of be brought up and have that playing field made level, that other people have to sacrifice something. And it's like, no, actually, when you're part of the LGBTQIA plus community, you are just wanting to have the same rights as everybody
Yeah.
else. We just want the
Yeah.
same freedoms and the same
Yeah.
recognition. It's not more, just the same.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's too much to ask for. And yet when you don't understand that that's not where it starts,
yeah,
then like you said, that the ignorance piece is, well, you're just taking something away from me, or we buy into the rhetoric that's being talked about, isn't it? There's some sort of safety issue around queer people. And it's just like, really?
Well, that brings us nicely to Cheryl's question that's popped up on the screen, perhaps a little prematurely. Do you think the UK realise that we've fallen behind and are going backwards compared to other countries when it comes to LGBTQIA rights? Do people realise?
I don't think most people do. I think outside of the LGBTQI plus community, they haven't got a clue. And I suppose why would they need to? They wouldn't need to. But it's only when you are within this community that you actually realise, and you actually you look at like when if you're going abroad, if you're travelling anywhere, as LGBTQI plus people, we can't just jump on a plane and go. We've got to do risk assessments, and we've got to look it up. As to where we can go, where you can go. If I go somewhere, can I hold my girlfriend's hand in public? You shouldn't have
Can I book a double room? Do I need to book a twin? Do I need to book separate rooms? And even right down to, are we walking too close together?
Yeah. And you shouldn't have to do a risk assessment every time you do that. And that is now happening in parts of the UK as well. And there are so many anti-LGBTQI plus laws and everything now, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And over the last 14 years, we've dropped right down. I mean, we were ranked right at number one, I think 14 years ago. And something happened 14 years ago. I can't imagine what it was.
I think what that was.
I don't know what it was. And now is it number 17 we're at now? I think it's like we've dropped right down. It's right down. So it's not
absolutely
good.
bonkers.
But I think for me as well, like when it comes to do people in the UK realise, I think back to your point, Katie, it's like actually if we're not paying attention to people who aren't us, how do we know what other people are experiencing? Right? We don't. We just think, well, I'm okay, they're probably okay. And because I would imagine the majority of people don't have feelings either way when it comes to the community. Like most people don't have any issues, any problems, any concerns. Right. We're very live and let live, right? So I can imagine for a lot of people the assumption is like, well, why is it a problem? Why can't people just have the same rights? And they don't question any further to understand, do people not have the same rights?
But that's part of the kind of the liberal blind spot that I've spoken about before, and that can sometimes be to our detriment. So this is where not only social media algorithms are to blame, but also just our social human algorithms. We naturally form bubbles with people who have similar mindsets. Social media will just show us people with similar mindsets. We hang out generally with people who have similar mindsets, or we assume that they do, or we stay away from areas where we might not. So therefore, the majority of liberally minded, fair people, if they don't see any issue and that we have equality now, they're not going to notice where things are changing. And when budgets are being taken away, so just before we went live, I found a link, and I'd missed this, back in February, that just under the radar, very, very quietly, funding had been taken away from the NHS LGBTQIA program. And that's, I can see where, if we're not careful, people who don't see why there's still a need for things like that might say, well, why do we need to put money into that now? Surely that could be better spent elsewhere. And here's the issue for me. We don't tend to recognise that there's any backlash until we see the backlash very publicly, until there's a beating or a murder or really hideous comments online. I mean, back to the flags thing again, I noticed that Peterborough Council had put a post up on social media, on Facebook, just saying they've raised the flag for Pride Month. And it was full of hideous comments, actually some really, really good, sensible, credible replies from people not getting annoyed, but just explaining calmly and kindly and politely. But we don't notice there's a problem until the problem becomes so big that we can't ignore it. So should we look a little bit at some of the rights that have been taken away or are starting to be stripped away now? And I imagine there's going to be lots of these that are going to be quietly slipped under the radar the closer we get to, I don't know why, but I'm thinking Independence Day, July the 4th.
Something's happening around then, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
no idea what.
Can't imagine what.
So what's happened then? Where are our rights being eroded? Katie Neeves, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, brace yourself. I might be talking for quite some time. So, right. So a lot of this is aimed at trans people. Let's face it, and I think most people are lovely people who don't want to offend, and they're supportive of trans people. They don't understand us. They probably haven't met trans people.
Or they don't know they've met trans people.
Exactly. That's just the point. When I'm walking down the street, probably nobody realizes that I'm trans, and that when they hear me talk, they probably do, because I've still got a deep voice. But when they see me, they probably don't realize, and so they don't realize they've met a trans person there. But day to day, I don't have problems. People are absolutely lovely. I know some trans people do, and it's a very lookish society. And so if they look more visibly trans, then they tend to get more hassle. But I'm very lucky, and I do realise I do have that privilege. However, most people are lovely. But we've got some very anti-trans laws and various different things that have happened certainly in the last year, and it's getting a lot worse. And certainly in the last month or two, it's got a hell of a lot worse. So it started off with the Cass review, where a lot of people have just heard what was reported in the media. However, the UK media is very biased against trans people, with one or two notable exceptions, but most of them are very anti-trans. And so the Cass review has been reported as being a really good thing in protecting children. But actually, let's unpick this a bit. So first of all, Hilary Cass, she's not unbiased. she's a retired paediatrician who had no experience of dealing with trans kids. So that start with, and so she was leading this. And on her top team, she didn't have any trans people. She had lots of anti-trans people, but no trans people on the top team leading this, which I think is terrible. And she's associated with lots of anti-trans hate groups. So there's loads of them about. It's all the same people who are in them. It's just to make them look as if there's more of those people. But she's associated with all those. But she's not associated with any trans inclusive groups. Her team was then consulted to go and talk to Ron DeSantis' team in Florida about the trans healthcare ban in Florida, and so this shows where it's coming from. So this is the background to it all, and basically she disregarded most of the evidence, and she set the bar too high for the evidence, just so that it just wasn't admissible, whereas a lot of it couldn't have been, just because things like doing double blind tests on puberty blockers, which would be impossible to do. That's where you would so double blind is where you have where you'd have a placebo and also the correct drug that you're trialing, and then you don't tell both the doctor and the patient which one it is. But that would be impossible to do with puberty blockers, because as if with a child who had the placebo, well, their puberty would just start. It would just be obvious, so you couldn't do that. So things like that, and so anyway, and the results of that then sort of came up, just saying, oh well, there's not enough evidence that it actually stops gender dysphoria. But she asked the wrong question there, because puberty blockers aren't there to stop gender dysphoria. They're there just to buy some time. Because what's been happening is for years, I mean, since the 1970s, they've been used, and all they do is just buy adolescents some time, until later on, until usually it's usually at the age of 16, and then they can make decisions, because that's when they're at the age of consent for the NHS, in terms of having more permanent stuff done to them, that they can make that decision about more permanent things like cross-sex hormones. But with puberty blockers, all that happens is that it just halts the onset of puberty, and then as soon as they stop taking them, it starts up again. And the thing is that they are still being used, and have been used since the 60s and 70s, for cisgender, that's non-trans kids who've got precocious puberty, so early onset puberty. they're used from a much younger age, and they're used for much longer, and nothing was said about that. And they said that they're perfectly safe for them.
Yeah.
So if they're perfectly safe for them,
Yeah.
why aren't they perfectly safe for trans kids? And now what has happened is that the health secretary has used an emergency power under the Medicines Act to bring in a temporary ban, which lasts for, I think it's 3 months, on the prescription and supply of puberty blockers to all trans kids. And this is not just on the NHS; she's stopped it privately as well. So it's illegal for people to possess it, privately as well.
Mhm.
And because on the NHS they can't get it anyway, because they've had that ban for a while anyway. Just ever since there was a court case which was overturned, but the NHS still banned it. I mean, there's a real bias there in the NHS against trans people. It is horrendous. So the only way for trans adolescents to get hold of puberty blockers, or the parents to get hold of for them, is privately, and to pay a lot of money to get them privately. And now they've stopped that, and it's absolutely horrendous. And I know already of at least 5 trans adolescents who've attempted suicide because they're so desperate and they're so worried about their transition being stopped and being forced to detransition, and their puberty starting. And if you think about it, doing nothing is not a neutral act, because if like puberty, I said I'd be talking for a long time, so I'm sorry you got me off on one.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You're saying everything that I was having a similar rant on a podcast this week.
But puberty for anyone is a traumatic time. If they're non-trans, it's a traumatic time. But when you're trans, it's like a train crash that's coming towards you, and you know that it's going to happen, and you're running out of time, and you know that your body is going to permanently change in a way opposite to the way that you feel inside, and you deeply feel inside, and it's so traumatic. It's horrendous. And the thing is that with those puberty blockers, that can halt it, and it really is a life-saving drug, and they're stopping that, and they are doing so much harm to trans kids. It is absolutely horrendous. So so that's one thing. So CAS review and that temporary ban. There's another thing that the government brought out some guidance for hospitals, saying that it's all basically aimed at trans women. Let's face it, it's never aimed at trans men. They seem to get forgotten along the way somehow. But basically, talking
patriarchy.
about exactly talking about same-sex wards, basically.
But also, until things like the same-sex toilets and changing rooms do come into law, if that actually happens, and then suddenly they're going to be hyper aware of trans men, aren't they?
Well, exactly, because this is the thing, you see, because if they stop trans women going to into women's loos or toilets or whatever, then they've got to admit trans men, and there you go. Kelly's just putting that up there. So AJ, her husband, is trans, lovely guy who's got a beard, and you wouldn't to look at him and to hear him, you would not know that he's trans. Most people don't know that he's trans, and that's the case for most trans men. They transition very successfully, where they don't need to be out, because their voices break with the testosterone they take. Unfortunately, it doesn't work the other way around. That's why I sound like a chain smoker. That's but that's the thing. They'll end up having more. They'll end up having trans men going into ladies' loos and on wards and whatever. And that could force that then you could have cisgender, so non-trans men going into those places and saying that they're legitimate to be there because they're trans when they're actually not. But it's just not going to happen. If we're talking about loos, it's ridiculous, because
it's always losing bloody changing rooms, isn't it? And it's so ridiculous.
A sign on the door isn't going to stop anyone with malintent going in there. It's not. And the thing is, if you think about it logically, you think, well, how would this sort of thing be enforced? And then we're coming on to the Equality Act 2010, which the Tories are saying they want to redefine. redefine the protected characteristics of sex to biological sex. Well, does that mean the sex you were assigned at birth? In which case, then that would overrule the Gender Recognition Act, which actually shows that you actually can legally change sex and have a new birth certificate. So, how are they going to actually police this? Are we going to be required to show our birth certificate just when we want to have a wee? And so there's going to be a toilet attendant at every toilet just checking your birth certificate. And if you do, well, actually think about it. So for the trans people that have got a gender recognition certificate, they've got a new birth certificate. So they would just show that. Okay. And most people haven't got their birth certificates anyway. And the other thing is that birth certificates aren't a valid form of ID. So, I could get hold of your both of your birth certificates and I could show one of yours. Nobody's going to know.
Yeah.
So it's not a valid form of ID. So the whole thing's really and let's face it, nobody's going to do that. And nobody's going to check anybody's genitals before going in. That would be absurd. It's just not going to happen.
And also inaccurate.
So what's going to happen? And so what is going to happen is that it'll be all down to looks. And so it's how female do you look? Well, and the people who are going to suffer most, I mean, I've been very lucky. I've never had any problems at all using women's loos. People who do have a lot of problems, I've got lots of butch lesbian friends who are cisgender. They're not
just
trans.
masculine displaying cis women.
Exactly, masculine displaying cis women, and they get a lot of abuse. And that abuse will increase.
There's already cases of people who've been, manhandled and beaten out of ladies' loos.
Yeah.
Who are
women, and that will just increase. And
one of the other concerns I have, Katie's moving forwards, if these horrendous people, by some awful miracle, end up staying in power, is that they are starting with trans women. And I've got no proof for this other than gut feel, but it strikes me that a lot of the backlash that trans people are getting now, it's the same thing or very similar to what people who are out and gay were getting a couple of decades back. I still remember protesting against Section 28 and some of the most hideous stories I heard as a journalist when I was reporting on homophobic crimes. And that's not to say that trans hate has just appeared. Of course, it's always been there. But just as it started to kind of visibly calm down on the on gays, lesbians, bisexual, pansexual, everything apart from the T in LGBTQIA,
just rocketed for us.
Yeah, it's awful. What's to say that again you're not the starting point, and it's just going to go backwards? It's for every so often you get somebody saying that they want to remove equal marriage. So it's.
Yeah, and what were the names that gay men were being called in the 70s and 80s? They would be called paedophiles, predators, sex pests, groomers. Yeah. Guess what? I get called those names every day on social media. You've seen the amount of hate that I get. I mean, the amount of hate. I mean, and particularly recently, it went through the roof after a certain author, who shall not be named, decided to tweet about me to 14 million followers. It's just awful. It's just and the hate is just through the roof. And this is the thing, is that trans people are, and particularly trans women, are called those names all the time. It's history repeating itself. We're 50 years behind trans gay men.
Yeah,
we really are.
I just tried to think.
Yeah, the other law that I was going to talk about, actually, because you mentioned Section 28. And that's coming back in. So there's guidance that the government's issued for schools. Again, it's not statutory yet, and hopefully it won't be now. But it is guidance, which I hope all schools will ignore. But basically,
coming in under a different name, isn't it?
Exactly. So there's two parts to it. One the part of the guidance is saying that teachers have got to out any trans pupils to their parents, and that's horrendous in itself, because. If you think about it as a parent, you think, oh yeah, well, I'd want to know, but that's all right if you're a supportive parent. A lot of parents are not supportive of their trans kids, and they subject them to, to a lot of abuse. It's, conversion practices, in the name of conversion therapy. So nothing therapeutic about it at all. There's a predetermined outcome, and so that's not therapy. It's abuse.
And again, same thing coming down the line, that lesbians and gay men.
Yeah. Exactly. And so
I remember when I was at school that there were a couple of kids who were out at school. I've no idea how they identify now. I'm going back to when everything was in sepia and we had square wheels. But that would have been their safe space. So just as now they're saying that you have to report to the parents or the guardians if a minor is using a different name or using different pronouns. Imagine back then if schools were obliged to go and report back to parents and guardians if a child was showing elements of same-sex attraction. But where does this stop?
It's horrendous. And the thing is that nobody, the kids aren't doing anything medically at school.
No.
It's just what they're
just existing.
They're just existing. It's making them feel
Being
comfortable
kids.
by using the name that they want to be called and pronouns they want to use. That's it. That is it. It's not. Yeah, and yet it's not what you read in the Daily Mail. Oh, they're transitioning at school. They're not.
And for me as well, I think it's important to really call out as well. This is beyond like the gender binary as well, because there's also the forgotten group of people who sit in the middle of kind of agender, gender fluid, like non-binary.
Absolutely
people.
non-binary people.
And again, we're going to force people into these binary buckets, which is just nonsensical, because like you say, people just want to exist. And they might change their mind. They might want to use they, them pronouns for a little while, realise they don't fit and go back to using something different.
And so what?
What does it cost?
Does it matter?
Like, just allow someone the freedom to try it on and decide what they like.
Yeah. And usually most gender non-conforming people go, and myself included, you go through a stage where you're working out what gender you are, because you realize that you're not the sex that you were assigned at birth. The gender doesn't coincide with the sex that you were assigned at birth, but you're not sure, and so you go on this journey. As you know from my story, I went on that journey, and you just need to give them the freedom to explore it and just and go with it. And if it's not right, they'll work it out that it's not right, and that's fine. And that's the use of names and pronouns that just helps them to do it, and it's just about making them feel comfortable.
Do you know what? Although trans is so obviously the target at the moment, there's an element of this that applies to all kids, isn't it? Because every kid, and the majority of kids, is going to go through a phase where they're not sure who they are or who they fancy, and if they fancy anyone, or who, what, where, when, why. And it was confusing enough for me growing up in an environment where I was supposed to be a good straight Christian girl. And I went a long way down that path before recognizing that I would just die if I kept trying to live the life everybody else wanted me to live, and slowly unpicking it. So I'm sure that even the hardiest anti-trans or homophobic individual, if they think back to some of their most confusing times growing up, surely would be able to relate to some of this confusion and hormones popping all over the place and sometimes in the wrong direction. How can any human being not be able to relate to any of this and not be able to create a safe space for our kids under the guise of keeping them safe? They're keeping our kids safe by actually pushing them into the danger zone of mental health, emotional health, probably in lots of cases attempted suicide.
Exactly that. And I've done some talks to some groups of
Katie
parents.
Allen, just butt in. She's gobby. Just go for it.
Katie, I'm taking over here.
Go on, Katie.
So I'll give you a chance in a minute. Sorry.
Oh, you get the eyebrows.
Probably for nothing, do they? Thanks for the reminder, Taz. There'll be a big hook in a minute and be dragging me off. Shall I finish this story or shall I just shut up? I will finish it. Thanks, Katie.
Go on, finish it first.
But I've done some talks to some groups of parents of trans kids, and they're all at different stages of their journey of acceptance, with their kids. And I remember at the Q&A at the end, one mum said to me, "Can you tell me how I can stop my son from doing this?" And I just said, "You're not going to like what I'm about to tell you, but you can't. It's futile." I said, "If you try, it will do two things. One, it will make your child very, very unhappy, and possibly even suicidal. And two, it'll ruin your relationship with them. You can't fight gender dysphoria." And I tried for 48 years fighting it. It doesn't work. It'll get you in the end. The thing to do is just to support kids. Go with it. They don't have to do anything permanent. That's fine. Just go with it. Buy them some time and support them and let them work it out for themselves in a supportive and safe environment. And then once they've worked it out, then you look at your options. But that's the thing to do. And just be supportive, because it's a really tough journey, and you don't want to make it any tougher for them. And nobody wants to ruin their relationship with their kids either, do they?
And again, history repeating. You can't fight gender dysmorphia. You can't in the same way that you can't fight sexuality.
No,
it's just there.
No, but for me,
go on, eyebrows.
Yeah, the key thing into this, certainly my opinion, is it's fear-based, right? And specifically manufactured fear.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's much easier, because a lot of this, the fear that we get told the thing we should be told and be scared of is predatory behavior of people. And rather than actually look at the root cause of that and address rape culture, or address systemic issues of patriarchal structures and colonialism and all, rather than do the hard work that will actually make a difference, it's much easier to go, yeah, but nobody really knows anything about trans people. So there we go. That feels like an easy win, because we can paint them as a villain, stir up a few clickbaity headlines. That's great. People will believe us. And that's a lot easier than actually having to accept our society is a fucking mess. And it's really difficult to fix. And so if I'm in government and I'm like, well, I want a bunch of votes, I've got a lot of donors who are giving me a lot of money, they have these leanings anyway. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot easier for me to play into that and stir up some, among people who don't have friends or family, or have no experience, no exposure, no understanding, no frame of reference. Really easy to just pick yourself an easy mark.
There's a clear trail there, isn't it? Particularly with our current ruling party, of campaigns being pushed towards the people that they know will vote for them, and that are insisting on change in order to vote and to make the donations. A very, very different issue. That's why Badger's got it in the ass a few years back too. It's just
yeah. But also it's a convenient smokescreen, because it's an issue. Trans rights are an issue that most people have no idea about. It features very low on. There we go. Very low on people's agenda. They're not that bothered about it, and that's how it should be. To be honest, that's exactly how it should be. Most people are interested in the big stuff, like the state of the economy, the state of the NHS, defence, and immigration, all environment, exactly. The big stuff. That's what most people are interested in. And trans rights are right the way down there.
But none of them have an answer on that stuff, do they? Because they don't want to commit to their environmental targets. They don't have a good solution for tackling immigration. The solution to that is, well, let's just pretend they don't exist and push them somewhere. It's not actually
in the average human being's house
that we're causing that's making these people want to be.
They are going to be people. Yes. The average human being is going to be far more concerned about whether they're going to have to dick about and have an electric car charger plumbed into their driveway than whether there's somebody trans in the next village.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Some do, but
to your point as well about where does it stop, right? Because I always like to look over at the states and think, well, what's happening over there? Because that's usually quite indicative of some of our government states going forward. And when you think we've had, the rollback of women's abortion rights. Okay, so that's it, and we're seeing that creeping in. Now we've had the laws that were kind of, well, I don't know if it's law, it was the debate about rights around contraception.
Yeah,
and there's been voting on that now, and it's like we see this happening, and yet we're still like, yeah, but those trans people, and it's like, are you fucking kidding? It's like it's the law. It's like the system makers are the
and
problem.
the book bans as well, and just
like, well, but because access to education means that we're going to fight back, right? So let's not educate people. Like critical race theory. No. Let's not learn about all the things that we've done wrong in our historical past. No. And it's just like, well, because that arms us with the capability to mobilize together as one and do something about this, and that's dangerous.
And going back to the
putting this one
section
back again.
Yeah, with the with the section 28, if you're not allowed to educate kids about LGBTQI plus people, and particularly trans people, because they're saying that there's just going to be a ban on that completely. I mean, it's horrendous because what about kids who are questioning their gender, but not just them? What about those kids who've got trans parents? I mean, if I look at my daughter, for instance, when I came out as trans, she was 6 and she was at primary school, and I went to see the head teacher and told her that I was going to come out as trans, and because we wanted support put in place for her, and the school was fantastic. They were able to do trans awareness training. I mean, it helped actually that there was a young trans girl pupil in the school as well, so that it came out at the same sort of time. So actually did some trans awareness education for all the kids using age appropriate language, and so there were some books that were aimed just to show the differences, but it's nothing major, but just enough, and it was fine, and it was brilliant, and they did such a good job that would all be banned. They wouldn't be allowed to do that.
And also, you just know that there are people who don't have all the information on this, who would be chomping at the bit at the statement about there being a trans girl in the class. At 6 years old, they don't know that. They should be protected from this.
Yeah. Protected from what? Someone living their life.
And what do you mean by protecting them? Do you mean just making them very, very sad and confused and feeling unloved and unwanted and deep, deep shame? Where do you think that's going to lead?
Because the banning of education is not the non-existence of people. Like those two things are not the same.
But also, if you're saying protecting, then you're conflating people that are causing harm to others with trans people. We're not. We're just another section of society like everybody else. Yes, there will be people who are trans who don't know how to behave themselves, just as there are lots of non-trans people who don't know how to behave.
It's not a gender identity thing.
The vast majority of both cisgender and transgender people do know how to behave themselves, thankfully. But some don't, and that's why there are prisons, and that's why there's that's why there's a justice.
There are cowboy sparkies. It doesn't mean that you're never going to let an electrician into your house just in case.
No.
And to swing that lens as well around, to bring it back to kind of sexual orientation as well.
Yeah.
So when I was at school, no one was talking about it, and if they were, it was a case of you either like boys or you like girls, and I was a bit like, well, I don't think I like girls, so I'll probably like boys.
God, what's wrong with you, you freak? Honestly.
You don't know what you're missing.
But the truth of the matter is, the answer now is like, I like neither and both. And it's taken me ages to get my head around that.
You're just so greedy, Katie.
I know.
You just want it all, don't you?
But that's the point. It's like no one had those conversations, so I couldn't make an educated decision about my life. And because of that, through all of the for all of the years that I was essentially sexually active in my life, I was conforming to something that I thought I should be doing. And then whenever I had issues and I went to see my GP, they always ask about your sex life, right? Because apparently your sex life is an indication about how healthy you are. And I was put on antidepressants. I was put through all kinds of nonsensical talk therapy and all this kind of stuff, when all I needed to have was someone explain to me like, oh no, you do know that other types of sexual orientation exist, right?
Yeah.
Simple.
I could have saved the NHS a shit ton of money.
And again, same here. When I talk about some of my past with, the abusive relationship and the suicide attempts, and how much of that came about because I was trying to force myself into a heterosexual box that I was just never going to fit, to please everybody else, because I was so afraid of fitting every stereotype that had been foisted upon me from being knee-high to a grasshopper. I was terrified. And, back then, I'd look at other lesbians in the media on the rare occasions they thought, well, I'm not like them, so who am I? we've not. We like to think we've come so far, and yet we seem to be just swinging. The pendulum's swinging back, and it's doing it. And it's doing it so silently that by the time it's come full circle, it'll be too late. Well, tumbleweed. Big gay tumbleweed.
Big gay tumbleweed. Yeah. And something else I want to say, because now I'm feeling
Go on.
Yeah. But like there is also this conception as well that I have now realizing that I encounter about the kind of the notion of like straight presenting relationships as well.
Yeah.
Like I noticed this, like, because it was saying that if I want to go on holiday with a partner, if my partner happens to be the same gender as me, that's likely to be problematic. If my partner happens to be the opposite gender of me, okay, well, we're cool with that, regardless of how either of us actually identify. But there is that expectation on society, like, and I certainly know that this conversation happens around bisexual people, but I experience it now as an asexual person. And like, yeah, but you're in a relationship with a man, so you're straight. It's like, no. The measure of my worth and the measure of my sexual attraction is not based upon the person that I'm with. It's based upon me. It's me. I decide. It's not a measure of someone else.
So how would you identify? Let's pick this apart a bit, because I know a lot of people get confused around bi and pan and ace, and they're just people. I mean, I've asked you so many questions, and just help me. And I know you've asked lots of questions too.
I had to figure it out as well. I didn't know either.
You know, there's this massive daft idea that if you are somewhere in those letters, you know everything. No, I'm sometimes not sure what all the different acronyms mean. And so within that ACE spectrum, can you speak a little bit more about what that spectrum is, what it means, what's there, and what all the different terms are? And within that spectrum, given what you've just said, does that mean that you would then identify as bi or pan within that spectrum, or does that not come into it because ACE overrules it all?
Right. So I'm going to say to look at it differently. And this is now the way that I'm coming at it from, is rather than looking at kind of the letters that are available and thinking which one best suits me, what I have chosen to do is to think about my sexual orientation in terms of the direction that I experience sexual attraction. So if we forget about the fact that there's a gender on the other side of it, it's just when I experience sexual attraction, where does it go? Is it an outward thing, which for the majority of people it is? It's an outward projecting thing. And then you will naturally find you probably land upon someone who is the same or opposite gender of you or not. And there'll be kind of more often than not, you'll know what attracts you, right? So for most people, it's an outward thing. But for me as an ace person, it doesn't flow outwards, right? So for ace people, that attraction just isn't there. So it doesn't go anywhere. It's not directed at anybody. So it doesn't mean that I don't experience sexual pleasure. It doesn't mean that I don't, I'm not sex favorable, because I am. It just means that I don't have, it doesn't go anywhere. Like I don't care. Like, and so there would be, when you talk about pansexual people, it would be that when that orientation, the direction of my sexual attraction, it has no preference as to the gender of someone. There'll be something else. Because, you know, as a straight person or as a gay person who is attracted to the same or opposite sex, like you're not attracted to every person of the same or opposite sex. There are other things as well that make someone attractive to you.
You do have taste, yeah.
I mean, exactly, right? So just for me, it's just like that attraction doesn't go anywhere. So if I'm going to enter into a sexual relationship with somebody, there has to be something else that brings my attraction into that space, but it's not going to be that. So it's a different experience. And that's not to be confused with romantic attraction, which is why we have asexual and aromantic, in the same way that there is allosexual and alloromantic, which is like the cisgender equivalent in gender. And it just means what makes me romantically attracted to someone? Where am I getting those emotional connections from? Like how am I experiencing other forms of attraction that don't necessarily happen in my pants?
Right. Thanks, I think.
Yeah.
That was my concentration face then. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
That was like I was when I was trying to log into StreamYard today.
Yeah.
You were looking at my nose.
But I think some of the things that stood out most for me there was the park the letters for a minute and park the gender, because this is where we create more confusion for ourselves sometimes, isn't it? Because, well, we need to have a label. Which one of these do I fit into? And, you know, for God's sake, if sizing labels don't work in clothes, how on earth are sexuality and gender labels going to work for us all? We all know that, you know, you could buy a 6, an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 14, and they'd all fit or not according to where they'd come from. So it's got to be our interpretation. But by the same token, I don't think that society is at a place yet where we could just get rid of the labels. You know, I long for a society where we don't need labels and we don't just assume. But by the same token, if we just got rid of all labels now, that right-leaning movement that's coming more and more to the fore will just push everything away and push everything underground.
The labels are helpful for conversations and for communication, like to help us express differences. So for me, that's where the labels are important. But from an understanding perspective, it was really helpful for me to stop trying to fit into a box and go through, oh, well, do I do this because it would make me that? Do I do this because it would make me that? It was actually like, just what do I experience? And what I experience, and breaking it down by going, well, actually, I experience sexual attraction differently to I experience romantic attraction, and building emotional connections with people. And once I understood all of those things, I knew how to connect with other people to make me happy. And then I can frame it as a label, right? So I understand I'm asexual because my sexual orientation, my attraction doesn't go anywhere. But I'm pan-romantic because the gender of the person I become romantically attracted to doesn't make a difference to me. It's how that person makes me feel.
So where's the line for you? This might seem like a really obvious question, and we've had this conversation before, I think, but for everyone watching, where's that line between romantic and sexual? What's the difference for you?
Where is it for you?
Not a bloody clue. So if you don't know, how can you? For me, it's all part of the same. You know, I tend to only have historically, unless you're watching a movie and get a massive crush on the characters, which we all do. And that's another thing, isn't it? You get crushes on characters sometimes, not necessarily the people playing them. But for me, as a general rule, romantic attraction and sexual attraction are all rolled up into one. You know, I've frequently laughed with my mates that I have a Victorian vagina. You know, I don't want to take that next step on unless I have a romantic and a loving connection to someone. I've never been the one night stands type. I've never been the fling type. I'd probably be a serial monogamist at some point. Yes, I have the relationship I have with Asha. Of course, there was that sexual attraction there. 26 years later, that's still there. But the romance is all part of the same thing for me. They're not two separate things. It's a big jumbled up, squidgy, beautiful little love puff.
Oh.
But like you say, you need one to have the other.
Yes.
So they are actually both important. So there will be things in the romantic side that will help you build the sexual attraction. And that's the same for people who are like grey sexual, so grey ace, and that you want a deep emotional connection with someone before you're willing, or you start to feel experiencing an attraction sexually towards that person. So that's great. Like that, and that's what we you know, that's enough, right? That's enough for anyone. And for me, it's about like, I've always like, even like when I was really young, there were people that I was really into, like Keanu Reeves, Eddie, Susie Izzard, there were just people, and Anthony Hopkins, right? That would not, because I realized it wasn't a sexual thing. It was my brain. Like I fell in love with their brain. There was just this thing about who they were and how I felt. And that's different, right? And that's got nothing to do with my bits. Like it's got nothing to do with like that just doesn't work. But there, I mean, you know, I'm not experiencing those things. I can be physically stimulated, but I don't send it outwards.
Yeah. And something I ought to point out is that a lot of people get mixed up, between sexuality and gender, and they're two completely separate entities, and they're not linked. So, like in my case, I've always been attracted to women, and I still am. It's been one of the constants in my life. It's just that for me, the labels change. So previously, I was labelled as a heterosexual man. Now I'm labelled as a lesbian. It feels no different to me at all. I'm just attracted to women. That's all it is. And it's just a label. I'm just attracted to women.
Your experience is the same.
I didn't.
But it's so obvious when you say it, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
and I
so obvious.
I didn't choose it. I just am. Just as no one chooses their sexuality, and no one chooses their gender. It's just that most people are lucky in that their gender coincides with the sex that they were assigned at birth. But I wasn't. Yeah, that's all it is. It's quite simple.
That's
really.
An interesting one from Cheryl again here that leads on nicely from here. Do we think that gender dysphoria, i.e. gender identity is being conflated with gender expression and presentation, especially in young people who want to be free of traditional gender stereotypes?
That's a good question.
Shall I run with that one?
Go on, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. So many people assume that because someone wears particular clothes or has their hair a different particular way, or wears makeup or doesn't wear makeup or whatever, assumes their gender, and you can't. The gender expression is a completely separate thing, and so there are various different things that are all completely different. So you've got the sex. There's no actually legal definition of sex, and so as you've got sex.
It's all right. Rishi will tell us.
Well, you've got sex that you're assigned at birth, so that's basically based on the appearance of your genitalia at birth, and so the doctor or midwife looks between the legs of the baby, depending on what they see.
Outward presenting genitalia.
Yeah, and in this country, it's a binary choice, boy or girl. That's all. You can't put anything else down. Other countries, there's like a choice of 4 or not. You don't have to list it. So there's that. But then there's that. So you can have a birth certificate that's one way, and then you can have other legal documents as well, such things like a passport and driving license, NHS medical record, and that's another legal down as legal sex. So for me at the moment, I haven't bothered applying for my gender recognition certificate yet. I could have applied for it 4 years ago now, but I've just been busy and it's such a faff. I haven't done it. I will do it, but I haven't got around to doing it because like when do you need your birth certificate? Because that's the only thing it changes. It changes your birth certificate and your DWP record. Well, I'm self-employed anyway, so I don't need to worry about an employer knowing about it anyway.
But isn't it awful that while you're saying that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, for goodness sake, Katie, apply for it while you can.
I know, and I should do it. I should do it. I've just been really busy, and the sort of crap year that I've had this year.
Life gets in the way.
The stuff's got in the way this year, quite a lot of it. So yeah, I should have done it by now, but I haven't bothered. So, but I've had my female gender marker on my passport, driving license, and an NHS medical record for the last 5 years. So in terms of legal sex from that way, that's female, but in terms of my birth certificate, it still says male at the moment. But then my gender is female. That's that deep-seated feeling of how I feel in my head and my heart, and it's just the same as you have a deep-seated feeling about who you're sexually attracted to. It's the same sort of deep-seated feeling. You don't choose it, you just know it. So that's gender, and then you've got obviously sexuality, who you're attracted to. Who you're attracted to has got nothing to do with who you are. And then you've got gender expression, how you display yourself, how you present yourself to the world, what you wear, your hair, your clothes, makeup, that sort of thing. And they don't have to all coincide. For some people, they do coincide, and people are, and they're not binary either. It's there's a whole range. And people are on that range, and people are just people. They are wherever they are on it, and it's a beautiful world because of it. Because wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same?
Yeah,
wouldn't it just beautiful? Yep.
It's Katie, I know. Oh, I know, Kelly. Yeah, I know. I need to get it. But
you've done it now, Kelly. It's on the record, so you are now obliged to get us sorted out. Goodness sake, woman.
And to be honest, with the rights that I'm hopefully this hateful government will be kicked into the long grass soon anyway. But with what direction they were going in, oh god, yeah, I should have got it sorted out, to be honest, because it would have given me some more protection. Yeah, exactly.
Don't rely on the fourth, just in case.
I know. Yeah.
So, quote message from Shireen here. I think that was in relation to your ACE explanation, Katie. I think, is that right, Shireen? Is that what that was about? Otherwise, we'll just take it for everything that we've discussed.
Yeah.
Katie's explanation of gender and gender
Yes.
expression.
I mean, I'm looking at where it is on the messaging stream, but yes, absolutely, yes to all of the above.
Yeah,
we'll all take it.
How often do we spend time like really thinking about any of this and really like understand? We just get fed information and we take it as for granted, and then we wonder sometimes when we feel like we don't fit in, like, you know, that's not and everything, you know, it's not just the news and the media, but it's like it's TV programs, it's all of it, isn't it? Right? It's the stuff that we're fed is based upon, especially like in the media, like the minds of the people that create the telly that we consume. Like the limitation is the minds of the people that create it. So if we don't have representation of more people in those spaces, our minds are limited to that capacity, and that's it.
Yeah, or the bias of those people. And, you know, I think most people watching this, and if you don't, you'll know now what I was a journalist for many, many years. I still sometimes report.
So I was a photojournalist. I was working in newspapers and photojournalist.
So we kind of know how it works and and the way is often they'll kind of come up with the headline and then find the story to fit.
Well, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Here's this needle I've already found. Now you need to go and find the haystack that it's within. It's
maybe on the next episode, it's probably too long a story to tell now because we've been going for an hour anyway. But maybe on the next one, I could sort of talk about my my global media storm and what will happen there, because it's quite a story, isn't it? And it was horrendous, and it just shows you the power of the media, doesn't it?
It does. And please remember as well, for those of you who are thinking, well, I'd know about these things by now, blah, blah, blah. Just remember that there are so many news outlets now and so many stories from so many sources. That's why we have algorithms. You know, people go, why do I have algorithms? Why can't I just see everything in order? Because you wouldn't be able to see everything. So the algorithms are there to look at, to take note of the things that you appear to spend time looking at or liking or clicking or disliking, and it will then sort and show you more of the same. So a lot of this stuff around LGBTQIA plus issues, you won't necessarily see. Just, you know, we only found out about the flags and the NHS stuff because I was searching it today, thinking, has anything come up in the news recently that we need to talk about? And that's not just about these issues. I mean, any issue at all. You are not going to, if you are passionate about the welfare of elephants in Africa, you're not going to get those stories on your feed. You have to go and look at them, look for them. You have to search. So if you have any interest in equality, diversity, equity, for all of us, because again, as I said earlier, they're starting with you first, Katie. If we keep going further and further to the right, it's not just going to stop at people on this spectrum. And I sound like I'm fear mongering now, and I don't want to. It's just that these things they're going waves, and some of the things that seem to be being snuck in under the surface, under the radar, just seem so insidious that I wonder where it will all end if we don't just find some mutual understanding, and all of us, regardless of whether we identify as, you know, gay, straight, trans, ace, anything, human, team human, if we don't find common ground, who knows?
Yeah. You're talking about elephants. I heard a great story about elephants on news today. Did you hear it?
No.
Great, it's lovely. Oh, I like it. Anyway, it's apparently a team of scientists have been using AI to analyze elephants and the way they communicate with each other, and they call each other by names, and they've identified the names that they call each other, and it tends to be mainly the adult elephants calling their young. Yeah. Come in, Harold. Your tea's ready.
Right, eyebrows, nostrils.
Yeah. Is that what they call a trunk call? I don't know. That was terrible. That was really bad.
That was terrible.
I thought they were all called Nelly and Dumbo anyway.
I am still allowed to do dad jokes, by the way.
Yeah, well, apparently so. Apparently so.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And news suppression, that's a problem as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
And at the risk of sounding like our favourite former president, fake news is a thing. Yeah. It's just that the stuff he referred to as fake news very often wasn't, but it is a thing. Anyway, we are just about on the hour. I could talk all night, except I'm going to go and work with a local charity tonight to take them barefoot over broken glass to raise money for their charity. So that's going to be my fun night. What are you two going to be up to this evening?
Oh, not a lot really. Just
you're doing your gender recognition film, yeah.
You're gonna be nagging me about this. I know Kelly will be.
Kelly, get her.
Do it.
Kelly will be.
Kelly, find me on social, hook up with me, and we'll do a kind of tag team. We'll tag team her.
Nice.
So you're doing your paperwork. Katie Allen, what are you doing?
I'm having a glass of wine because I spent my morning at my old high school. So shout out to Saltry Academy, talking to kids about Year 8 kids about non-traditional career routes.
How amazing
I'm recovering from that.
Beautiful.
Well done.
Okay, so we will see you next on June the 21st. Where eyebrows? Where are you beaming to us live from for that one?
I am going to be at an Ibiza weekend thing in Peterborough Embankment. So if anybody wants to come and troll me live, come along.
And how sober do you think you'll be at that stage?
Oh, totally.
So
we're going to be eyebrows now.
We are. Yeah. You can't see mine though. Do one at a time.
Do you want my dye?
Yeah, I might. Just rub a bit through the screen. If you... Oh dear, I sound like I've already had a drink. A drink. Okay, so Friday the 21st of June, 6:45 p.m. Yeah. We should hopefully be joined by Katie Brown as well. We don't know what her nickname's going to be, but Katie, if you're watching this, you need to come up with something. I guess we've got kind of pinky eyebrows and nostrils, so you need yours.
We not.
I don't actually need one because I'm not a Katie. I'm not the one causing the confusion.
I want my nickname changed. Nostrils is not a good one, is it? It's not a good one.
No, I think you've got it for life now.
Well, I did. Actually, no. Should I tell you this? All right,
yes.
I will do. Okay. I was at a gig one time, and just before going on, we just talked about. I was talking to somebody sitting next to me about my hair, and I have a sort of natural wave in my hair, and I just saw it's a natural kink in my hair, and then next thing I know, I'm being called Kinky Katie.
Oh,
I didn't have to tell you. I didn't have to tell you that. Right?
So, do you want to be nostrils or kinky nostrils? And on that note, you better disappear.
It sounds like a porn name, doesn't it?
Kinky nostrils. Well, there's a new stream of income for you. There you go.
Should we find you on your OnlyFans?
Kinky nostrils. Do you want to borrow my pinky bit as well, so you can have kinky nostrils?
Love it.
Right, everybody, we will see you next time. Thank you so much for all your comments. We haven't been able to show all of them because there's just been loads. Thank you so much for your support. Please keep those coming in. If there are topics that you want us to talk about, let's just add this one.
I see that comment, yeah.
Pinky kinky nostrils trans tart.
Yeah, so, Kay's always called me a trans tart,
yeah, well, if the cap fits and all that. So anything you want to know, even if you're thinking this doesn't seem very PC, but I don't understand, if you want to drop any of us a message privately, and we'll find a way to answer your questions without embarrassing you. Honestly, my only kind of focus in embarrassing people is anybody called Katie. And I know I'll get it back. So you don't need to worry about them. I promise. I will get this back in bucket loads. But let us know.
But to echo that, definitely, because I think the most important thing for me is to have conversations. We need to have more conversations.
There's no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid thing is not asking.
And so often after doing this kind of thing and other stuff that I get up to, I get contacted by other trans people or partners of trans people, parents of trans people, and so often they can be struggling with their gender identity and coping with a relative who's trans, and so often all they need is just a little bit of hand holding just to show them that it really is okay to be trans, and it really is. I mean it's as simple as that, and it's wonderful to be able to be part of their journey, just to help them on their way. So so that quite often happens, and if that happens, then great.
It's okay to be trans, it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be lesbian, it's okay to be bi, it's okay to be intersex, it's okay to be ace, it's okay to not know, it's okay to be you, regardless of the labels. It's okay to be you. We'll see you next
Unless
time.
you're called Katie, I suppose.
Unless you're called kinky nostrils, eyebrows, pinky Neeves. I'm really going now. Lots of love, everybody. Thank you, ladies, for joining me. See you soon. Bye.